evenings in the pub distasteful. Diana, he realised later, would have rather enjoyed them, and perhaps because of that he kept her away. He knew that at work he was thought of as distant, aloof. He married above him, they said, and now he thinks he's better than us. When he was still living with Diana, he caught whispered suggestions in the canteen that with all her money he ought to retire. When they separated, no one offered sympathy or understanding. Perhaps they were rather pleased. It took him down a peg or two and showed he was mortal like the rest of them. So when he asked Hunter if he was free on Saturday morning to give him a hand to move some of the bigger items of furniture into the cottage, his colleague was shocked. "Why, aye," he said. "Of course I'll help." Ramsay sensed that things between them would never be quite the same again. They worked all morning, carrying the heavy furniture, most of it donated carelessly from the big house in Otterbridge by Diana, into the cottage. At midday, Ramsay took Hunter to the Northumberland Arms and bought him several pints of beer and his lunch. The landlady recognised him and smiled, but did not ask what he was doing there, so he thought the news of his move must already have reached the village. In the afternoon, Gordon Hunter left. He would want to be in Newcastle on Saturday night, and it took him time to prepare. So Ramsay was left to inspect the house alone. Apart from a cursory glance when he was shown round by the estate agent, he saw the inside of the property for the first time when he moved in, and they were too busy at first for him to look properly. There had been surveys, of course. He was not such a fool that he didn't care whether or not the place was falling down. But he had not wanted to inspect it in detail until the cottage was his. He wanted to see it stripped of the sad memorabilia of the old man's life, the photographs in heavy frames, the hand-embroidered chairbacks, the plastic mug for holding false teeth in the bathroom. From the front door there were 2 steps down into the living room. It was the biggest room in the house, the width of the cottage, with windows onto the road and at the back overlooking the Dean. It had been a mild February, and in the small back garden there were daffodils in the borders and a forsythia tree in bloom. The crocus were past their best. Inside the room there was a narrow brick fireplace. The windows were low and the sills 2 feet deep. At opposite ends of the room, facing each other, there were 2 doors. One led along a narrow passage to 2 bedrooms and a tiny bathroom, the other to the kitchen, which had been built as an extension. Ramsay carried the last packing case down the steps into the house just as it was getting dark, and almost immediately after, as if he had been watched, the doorbell rang. Outside stood a spry, white-haired old man. He was small and immaculately dressed, with black shoes that gleamed in the light of the hall. He thrust out a hand towards Ramsay. "Hello," he said, and his accent was as thick as any Ramsay had heard. "I'm your new neighbour. I'm a bit of a friend of Jack Robson, like, and he said you were moving in. Well, last sent us round to see if there was anything you need." No," Ramsay said. "I'm all right, I think, but it was kind of you to call." "I'll be away, then. She'll have the scran on the table." No," Ramsay said, and that too was an indication that things were changing, that he had decided it was impossible after all to live in complete isolation. "Come in, have a drink somewhere. You'll have one with me to welcome me in." As the old man moved into the house, even Ramsay recognised that things were different. In the 3 years since Diana had left, no one had crossed the threshold into the Otterbridge flat he'd rented. Here, in a day, he'd received 2 visitors. He went into the kitchen and unwrapped glasses from newspaper and rinsed them under the tap. He poured out whiskey and took it to the living room, where the old man was staring out of the window into the dark. "What made you buy this place, then?" he asked. Ramsay considered and followed his gaze to the window. That, probably," he said. "The view." "I will have to hope it'll still be there in 5 years' time," the man said. "I'd not bet on it myself." "Why?" Ramsay asked. "What do you mean?" "Do you not know who owns that land?" "No," Ramsay said. "I'd presumed it belonged to the farm in the lane." "Him!" The old man almost spat his disapproval. "He's nothing but an asset stripper." "Who did he sell it to?" "A man called Henshaw," the man said. "A builder up from the coast. He specialises in executive developments in rural situations. That's what his adverts say. I've heard them on the local radio." "The council wouldn't allow building there," Ramsay said. "It's greenbelt. I checked before I bought the house." "It'll not be up to the council, lad. Not any more. And I don't think that bunch in Westminster..."